Diana, how are you this evening?
I'm very well. I'm really happy to be talking to you guys tonight.
We're thrilled to have you. We signed with you. Gosh, I don't even want to figure out how long ago it
Almost a year
was.
ago.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. And we kind of fell off the wheel. The wheels fell off the wagon as far as the interviews go. So we've been wanting to talk with you, and we had been wanting to before we met you, and then after we met you, we wanted to chat with you even more because you've got a great perspective on this little movie we like, and we can't wait to hear about
And I will chat. There will be no stopping me when I start telling stories. So I want to know, like, what's the question before you start your question? What's the question? Think about what's the question you always want to ask people that you never ask, because I might tell you.
Oh.
Ooh.
But go
Okay.
ahead. Sorry.
Who
Go
are the
ahead.
biggest
Start.
assholes and why?
I mean, from my perspective, there really weren't. I wish I had those, and other projects. I'll talk, but no, I there weren't a lot of. It was more, Ghostbusters was so fast and furious. It was so crazy, and my perspective on that, having done more stuff afterwards, obviously, like it changed. But at the time, I'd never done a movie. I know I talked to you guys about this before, but I'd worked in an effects shop and worked on movies, but I had never, worked on one movie at a time. And so this is the first big thing I did. And I didn't really know that it was always crazy, and it never seems like you can get it done in time. They never give you enough time or enough money or people or whatever. I didn't have the experience to know that that was typical, but it was crazier than anything else I've ever, in terms of the schedule that I've ever worked on, including crazy commercials where I had one day to prep 12 sets and things. I mean, it really, really was. It was the only time in my entire career where someone said, "We don't care what it costs, just get it done." And that doesn't, I mean, you don't hear that a lot in
Yeah.
in Hollywood. And so it was crazy. The schedule was insane. And so there really wasn't time for anybody to be an asshole. It was, people were stressed. I was stressed. And there's sort of that asshole, excuse my language, guys. There's sort of that, jerk edge uh to, being so stressed. But no, I mean, people weren't really jerks.
That's
Not
good.
Hmm.
yeah.
We've talked with many people and some folks on camera, some not, and we haven't had a bad experience yet. It's
Yeah.
amazing, I've had bad experiences with other people, but
Yeah.
Ghostbusters has been really blessed by being worked on by just really good human beings, and
Yeah.
it's why we love doing this so much, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah, but the boss crew was very well hired. It was a really good space, and there were a lot of creative people there. And and it was, there's a certain, thrill whenever you're, in a group of people who are, all trying to do something, and it had that vibe for sure.
Hmm.
So why don't you take us back to the beginning then? You
Yeah.
how did Diana start how'd you get into the movie business?
Well, I got in, my cat's coming over. I got into the movie. I like a lot of people in my generation, when we saw 2001 as kids, I was 8.5 when I
Hmm.
saw 2001. My parents had just gotten divorced, and my dad didn't know what to do with me. He only had two things. He took me to the putt-putt golf, or he took me to the movie on the weekends when he had me. And he took me to the one movie in town, which was 2001. And just, I didn't understand it. I was 8.5, but I was blown away. And I instantly thought, a few minutes in, I need to do, I'd only seen Disney movies. And I was like, I have to do this. This is what I'm meant to do. When I don't know what it is, but this is it. And I remember walking out, holding my dad's hand, and he said, "Oh, this is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen." And I remember looking up at him and thinking, "You're wrong. He's wrong. What if he's wrong about other things?" It was like this, like my brain just blew. But that literally, for me, that was from that moment on. I was one of those kids who just knew what I wanted to do. And so I was studying drama, and trying to be a director in, high school and college stuff. But I met the special effects crew, Imagination, part Tim Lawrence, who we're just talking about, and Steve Sleep. It was a small group of guys in Jacksonville, Florida, who were doing these. Well, at the time I met them at Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we were in Jacksonville, Florida, in the late '70s. We were the only ones dressed up at Rocky. It was like the group of these guys, and then my three friends. You know, my friend Cooper is Frankenfurter, and my friend Anne-Marie and I is Magenta, and we were the only ones in costume, and we became fast friends really quickly. Imagination was doing foam rubber suits of Godzilla, and they were doing like Godzilla and Mothra fights at movie theaters, and dressing up as Dawn of the Dead characters, and chasing people, you know, chasing the audience members into the streets and stuff. They basically had a deal with this Jacksonville theater chain manager that if they would do promotions, they could get free movies. And I was like, I want in on that. And so, but we dressed up and got, the standard Rocky Horror crew. I was Janet. Unfortunately, didn't get to wear the sexy stuff. I was just, of course, I was Janet. And but we did that for years, and they were putting on these incredible like blacklight puppet fest shows at the planetarium in Jacksonville that if you saw them today, your mind would be blown. They were just one of the best things I've ever seen. They were not story wise, it was more like vignettes, but it wasn't the Lion King. But in terms of performance and in terms of just their mastery of puppets and foam building when they were 17, it was amazing. And there were, like, for example, they would have like just a simple snake puppet made out of foam, painted very realistically with blacklight paint, and just two sticks, and they were all in black in this planetarium. And projected on the planetarium wall behind them, cosmic concert style, were leaves of the sea, and the snake was flying by audience members, and then someone else would come in with another fish, or the devil from Fantasia would suddenly unfurl and be 12 feet high with skeletons dancing. I mean, it was insane what they were doing. It was incredible. And those guys were all headed to Hollywood in the late 70s, early 80s. They all knew they wanted to work. They met Rick Baker early on at one of the early, back when cons were these tiny little nerdy things and not what they are now. Like, every effects nerd with there wasn't Fangoria yet, I don't think, but with their little magazines, would all go, and their pictures of them in the 70s and their leisure shirts and Kiana suits and stuff, like talking to Rick Baker. And so they were all on a course out here, and I had gone off to college and had studied directing and gotten a degree in theater and film. And I came back to Jacksonville, and then briefly, and then came out here. And so my first job, Tim got me my first job. I think it was Tim got me my first job at Coast Effects. And then Mark got me the job on Ghostbusters, Mark Tyler. So those two friends, who were these incredible effects genius teenagers, who went on to have these incredible careers, like Steve Sleep, Tim Lawrence, Mark Tyler, the Cleve and Ken Hall, who I'm sure you guys know about too. Cleve had his reality show, right? Yeah. Monster Man. And so everybody had careers. Like, we all came out, and it worked out for everybody. Only one of them didn't come out, and everybody who came out had a great career. And we were very I didn't work with them that much out here, just a few things, but everybody was really supportive of everybody else. It was a really great crew of friends. Very, very lucky to know them. And we all
seems like. Sorry. I was just gonna say, it seems like from everyone we talked to, once you're in that world, it's a very tight-knit community.
Well, they're circles. They're like little groups of people, and you would all know each other. Back then, it was very small. And our Jacksonville crowd was very tight. And I was going to say every one of us slept on, someone's sofa or floor when we first came out in these like tawdry North Hollywood apartments, smelly, and we all ate, the same cheese doodles and chili, and it went on for years. Like it's like like the party food was the same, the apartments were the same, and we just sort of, kept going. But yeah, it was like there were certain special effects crowds that I never met. Like people would go, "Oh, of course you know so and so." No, I didn't. But your couple of crowds that sort of intersected and overlapped, and everybody would know when someone was not working, and or when they needed somebody, and you'd all work together. It was really nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. When I moved on to art department, I tended to work in effects whenever I was between jobs in the art department. And so I sort of kept my toe in all along the way, which was great, because I would go out and do these big sort of, you're out in the world, you're building giant stuff, and then come back into, I didn't appreciate it enough at the time because I was like, I want to be on set. I don't want to be in a room filled with smelly solvents. I want to be directing. Why can't I get it? I'm 22. Why can't I be a director yet? And uh, I didn't appreciate in my stupid youth how wonderful that was. Being in this workspace with a bunch of people who are really talented, all working on a project, and you know playing different people's music, and making everybody was smart, or almost everybody was smart and funny, and it was just great. It was a great community, and was a really good way to live a life. I didn't like the solvents, and I didn't like the blood and gore stuff, 'cause I was a 20-year-old girl. But I really liked the people. The people were great.
And it's interesting too. You mentioned that you were out there building, large things, and come to think of it, you were instrumental in building a very large thing, about 100 feet tall confectionery for this.
Confectionery.
Yeah, for this movie. What is that thing
Give me
called?
a little
Yeah,
more. This
Matt.
might be
What is
foggy
that?
brain.
Yeah, what is that? Is he made of like tires or something?
Oh,
The
let's
big.
He
see.
kind of looks like a Michelin man.
Give
Yeah,
me
a
a
little bit.
color. Give me a
Hmm.
texture. Yeah, I was.
Soft and delicious. We'll go with.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I came
Yeah,
in late. Like they were already starting, and
yeah.
I was hired as a PA. So Mark Tyler was already working in with Bill Bryan. Bill Bryan had this small crew, working in one of the outbuildings at Boss Film. One of the great things about Stay Puft. We're talking about Stay Puft.
Oh, the Stay Puft
Oh,
Marshmallow Man. Yes,
that guy.
yes.
Sorry, let me be elusive. But yeah, one of the great things about the Stay Puft crew was they had sort of a separate area. Most of the monster building at Boss, took place in this, giant building. That it was great. The big building was great because it, had stages, and people were building miniatures, and the 2010 stuff was starting to happen too, and it was a giant, production facility. But Stay Puft was a little bit down the street in this little outbuilding, and had its own, couple of rooms. And that was really great. That was one of the great things about Stay Puft. It was sort of off by ourselves, and um, I think I've told you guys, like one of my favorite things was the sheets of foam. Everybody would, the hours were incredibly long, and everybody would go take their lunch break, and most people were just napping during the lunch break. And there was a room full of mattresses, basically, just to stay puffed foam. It was very comfy. And
Mm.
so stuff like that, the pictures you've seen where we all put um the suits on. That was
Yep.
me, by the way, who sort of, I sort of forced everybody at the beginning. No one wanted to do it, and I was like, we have to do it. And then I'm really happy we did, because I love those photos. But um yeah, so the story for me coming into Ghostbusters was my dear friend, one of my oldest friends from Jacksonville, Mark Tyler. One of my closest friends now. I adore Mark, one of the most talented people I've ever known. Mark got me hired on that. They needed a PA, and he suggested me. And I had been working at Coast Effects, and I I'm out of here. I want to go work on Ghostbusters. And I can talk about working with Phil Kellison and the people there. If you Pete Kosachik, I mean, I was very lucky in my first gig in LA. I was mentored by some people who taught me the basics of everything in effects. I worked on the first Tondro system, which is the first motion control system. Like it was like a little Radio Shack computer, basically, was running on rails. I mean, it just, I was so lucky. I did rotoscoping, and I got the animation. I did a lot of stuff. But I was like, bye bye. We've got a big movie now, and like, but like a young person would. And so I got there. I was a PA, and I was mainly, in the beginning, I was responsible for doing runs to like Kitcraft, which was like a craft supply place in the Valley, and whatever stuff, so people could keep working. I would go run out and do the runs, or run to the other buildings and get stuff.
Sure.
Talking to different people, if like a memo sort of thing needed to go. And I was also doing real low level artist grunt work, like trimming seams and stuff like that, which was great. I loved it. It was very cold in there. I remember being very cold in the room all the time. It's good we had all that foam, I guess, insulation. So what ended up happening for me is I ended up being very lucky, just because most of us were put to work puppeteering. Most of the people who were working in the shops at Boss on the monsters became, they would grab you and, have you do something sometimes. But I puppeteered Stay Puft's mouth, was what I was given. It was very simple puppeteering. It wasn't going to be usually, I don't know if you guys know this, but eyes and mouth are like you probably, it's an idiot thing, but eyes and mouth are and being in the suit are the three big puppeteering things.
Yeah.
Sure,
do you guys know? Side note, do you know about what SAG did to the puppeteers?
No.
Oh, this is a great. Sorry, I'm going to go off on a side tangent. It is my way. A lot of people that I knew in effects were making their livings, very good livings, as SAG puppeteers, taking direction from directors, as actors do, and creating performances. And what happened when SAG had a union, what's the word, when strike? Thank you. SAG had a strike, and they went to the puppeteers and said, "Now, what is it you guys want? And what are the things that you've really been wanting?" And they wrote down what everybody told them, what the puppeteers told them, and then they used that as a negotiating tactic, and basically bargained away all the SAG puppeteers.
Wow.
So that was happening right as the Ghostbusters. You've heard about the Ghostbusters credit problem.
Yeah.
Like that is sort of, that story sort of encompasses that. So now, or I don't know how it is right now, but when I was last doing this work, puppeteering eyes and puppeteering mouth and being in the suit were the only puppeteering that was left, basically, as SAG performances in the end.
Oh.
And my SAG and general puppeteering stuff was like, yeah, Diana will do the tongue. Give Diana the cheekbone. That was sort of, I was like, I was new, and I wasn't a major puppeteer, so I would get the ears, but so for me, doing the mouth was great. That's like a very expressive major thing, and the contraption that moved the mouth was very basic. There were really only 4 positions for it, and it was a very simple contraption that you moved. It wasn't like one of the really like you're playing a game, sort of complex things. And but it was great, and I was really into doing the performing. I really enjoyed that. That was my favorite part of working on Ghostbusters.
I love the behind the scenes footage, the test footage that we've all, or a lot of us have seen at least, where you can see them testing the eyes and the mouth and just
Yeah.
seeing all the full expressions on Stay
Yeah.
Puft's face. It's
Yeah, you
pretty
can hear
impressive
me.
how expressive he was.
Yeah, you can hear me talking in the background on that actually. And the the what was it? You know, Bill was very good at
Mhm.
coordinating the the multiple parts of that. And as the thing that's weird about, I don't know if you have either of you guys ever puppeteered?
Not professionally, just for fun.
It's weird. It's like as we all do. The thing about puppeteering for camera is that you can hit your mark completely right, but if someone else misses their mark, especially if you're doing the eyes,
Mhm.
you hit your mark every time. But if the person in the suit misses a little bit, or someone who's doing a cheek misses a little bit, it can skew what you're doing. And so um, people will keep saying, "You're missing your mark, guys. You're missing your mark," and you're not. You're, oh god, the person next to you got right this time as they're yelling at me. So there's the coordination of the different elements is there's a technical thing, there's a performance thing, and then there's like leadership. And Bill was very good at all of those things, like getting everybody to have fun. As you can imagine, Bill was very good at getting it done professionally, but also keeping us happy and enjoying ourselves. And he was very good at the leadership skill of getting us all to, when we're exhausted and learning these new things quickly and whatever, just getting it to work right. And you can see that, I think, in that little bit of tape. Yeah. Sorry.
I agree with
See,
that.
I told you I wouldn't stop talking.
No, I actually
No.
I had two notes here I wanted to circle back to real quick.
Yeah.
Tim Lawrence, what did he dress up as for Rocky Horror?
Oh, Tim Lawrence was Dr. Scott,
Oh,
and
that's
a
fantastic.
very good one.
I
We were
bet.
very blessed. Like Cleve was a perfect meatball. Listen to me. Meatloaf. Sorry, I'm tired. Uh, Cleve really looked like Meatloaf. I kind of looked like Janet back then, and we had a pretty good cast, our Jacksonville crew. But yeah, Tim was. I don't know. Tim was a really good actor. I came home from college one year, and he was doing The Tempest in Jack's Beach. And I'm sorry, I can't remember which role it was. Uh, ugh, my nouns are gone, my proper nouns are gone, but the two friends in the two sort of jokey friends in The Tempest, the comic relief guys. Tim was one of them, and their Miranda had joined a cult 2 days before the show started
What?
and left. So Tim,
Okay.
I acted once with in a play with Tim. So Tim, got talked me into doing Miranda, even though I have stage fright, and I did Miranda with Tim, and I will never forgive him. Tim, like I didn't even know my lines yet, and I was very nervous being on stage. I'd had 2 days to prep, and he and his buddy started like playing like with the props and changing things around on me as a joke, and I was like, I'm gonna kill you. But Tim was a really fine actor. I saw him, and I did an acting class with him once, and he wasn't just a great puppeteer. He was a really, really good actor. I wish he'd pursued it. Yeah.
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 The other thing I wanted to ask here, and this might get deep, Diana. So
Oh,
it's something
I'm ready.
so I think I picked up on something. You
Okay.
said that 2001 is the movie that inspired you.
Yeah.
So then when you go on to work on your first big picture, what's being shot right next door but the sequel to that?
Oh
And
yeah.
I wanted to know, like, does that have meaning for you? And if so, tell us about that.
To be honest, it seems like it should have, but it didn't.
No?
Not that much. I mean, I obviously I love 2001, and it was so, just everything about movie making and finally being in Hollywood and all of that was really exciting. And seeing those miniatures was very exciting. But that I was so overwhelmed by everything that wasn't major in my mind. But it's a very good
Yeah.
question. I've never even really stopped to think about why I wasn't. And in the end, I didn't really love, like a lot of people, I didn't love
Yeah.
2010, but I should have been more excited about that, but I wasn't. Yeah. I was too like, trying to keep my job and figure
Yeah.
out, where to park. And
I'm
stuff like
working on a movie with Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd.
that.
Ah.
Yeah, exactly. And Sigourney Weaver, I
Yeah.
never met them, but I met Sigourney Weaver, and
Yeah.
I, I at that time, Sigourney Weaver, and now, of course, she's an icon, and I really wanted to be her. I did not look good in her haircut, but I had her haircut, and meeting her was just so cool. I really did one of those like, like, and she looked at me so, like kindly. I'm sure it happened to her all the time. She'd like laughed and was kind to me while I was geeking out over her. But yeah, I didn't, the thing about working in effects is a lot of times the people who are doing major jobs in effects never meet the stars and are never on set. Sometimes you take your creations and you go onto it, but that was one of my major reasons that I, started to move away, was I wanted to be, where the action was.
Mhm.
And I wish I'd stayed longer in effects, but
Yeah.
yeah, good question, Tom. Really good
Thanks.
question.
I'm curious. You talked about leaving Costa Effects because you had this big job, this big
Yeah.
blockbuster. I'm curious because when you talk to people who worked on Star Wars, they had no idea that it was going to be nearly as big as it was going to be.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you get a sense that Ghostbusters was going to be a big film at the time?
Everybody knew Ghostbusters was going to be a big thing. Everybody there knew. Yeah, I mean, there's that thing of like, Casablanca, everybody thought it was going to be terrible. There's that thing that happens, but that was not one. Everybody, you read the script, you went, "Oh yeah." And everybody knew, with the people involved and whatever, we were convinced as we made it that it was going to, if we could finish it, which we didn't think we could. But yeah, everybody knew it was going to be big.
Yeah.
So,
I,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you
Well,
got
I was just, I know that, and I know for Ivan, I've heard Ivan talk a lot about the one part of the film that he was really worried about was the part that you were most directly involved in. That if Stay Puft didn't work, he was worried that the film might not work. And so that's what I was just, because
He's
like
right.
it seems like your part was the big part, and if you were confident from the beginning, I mean that's kind of encouraging.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I remember reading it, and I keep trying to find my script for you guys. It's here somewhere, just amongst all the boxes. Um, but yeah, I mean, we all thought that was funny on the page, and from the perspective of doing some writing and whatever, Ghostbusters is not like in any way a traditional script. It its drive is sort of all over the place. It's really more SNL with the drive comes and goes, and there are a lot of things in the script that make, in retrospect, you look back at it and go, well, this shouldn't have been such a big hit. It's missing some of the story structure stuff that people say you have to have, and they're usually right. Especially that strong drive, straightforward. And but it works because I don't know, it's a chemistry, it's an alchemy thing. And yeah, I'm very, very proud to have worked on such, been a small part of such an iconic character. I see kids dressed up as Stay Puft, and I see it, on the street, and and Halloween and otherwise. It's really nice to be part of something that became so iconic. It's I'm proud of it. Have you ever heard about Mark Tyler and the flocking of his car? It's just a side note about
No, I have not.
Yeah, let's do it.
at the Stay Puft shop. Mark had some sort of minor accident to the fender of his car. Somebody had run into him or something, and he was flocking one day in the driveway, in this parking lot by the Stay Puft shop. And do you know how flocking's done? It's like you put the blue fuzzy stuff for the vest here, and then there's, I don't know what it is. It's like a magnet or something here, and it pulls the blue fluffy stuff into. Yeah, this is you can tell I'm not the professional in terms of flocking. The blue fluffy stuff, and I think it's a magnet and sort of anyway, there you put something here, and the blue fluffy stuff goes here, and you go, and the blue fluffy stuff goes into the foam and penetrates it and stays. and that's how the vest was flocked and the tie. And so there was some left over in his batch, and he flocked his fender, and he was so weird looking because he had this like little beat up white car, and there was this blue fuzzy fender on it. And that's one of my favorite like silly Ghostbusters memories, just because it was so out of the box. And it stayed that way for a long time. It was just this strange, you know, strange thing that was a
Yeah.
reminder of Stay Puft on his car for a long time.
So you said that the neckerchief and the
Oh,
tie.
I know
So
what you're going for here.
well,
Okay.
no. What is the you? I never knew that was flocked. What did it feel like? What was the texture of that stuff?
Um, it doesn't feel that different from foam because it really impregnates the foam, and foam is soft, but it's just a little softer. It's almost like a fluffy tempera paint or something like what kids paint with
Yeah,
in school. That's sort
interesting.
of how it feels.
Huh.
And one one of the reasons my Stay Puft my job on Stay Puft changed was actually around the not the flocking, but around the vest. Like what happened, like because I'd worked at Coast Effects and because everybody the blue vest, I know you guys want to probably touch on that, but before we touch on that story,
Are you talking about the day that you almost got
of
fired?
the missing vest on the Pyro Day, which I know you'll want to touch on. But for me, the vest got me like street cred, got me effects cred, and people took me more seriously because when I came in, everybody was already exhausted, right? So I'm like the newbie and I don't know much, but I've been working at this effects company for 9 or 10 months, and I've had these really great, like Phil Kellison did Puppetoons, like he's like old school effects, right? And so I'd gotten all these great lessons in blue screen and other, the other things we've been talking about. And what happened was they were back in the day there wasn't green screen yet on Ghostbusters. Green screen came a couple years later, or maybe even the next year. It was pretty soon afterwards. But as far as I knew, I'd never seen a green screen. There were still just blue screens. So when they were doing the original test of Stay Puft, Bill had done everything. The crew had gotten them all together. The suits were together. They were putting the vest on. I was a dresser at that point. I'd gotten the promotion to be like, the girl who cleaned and, made sure everything was right and helped get the air conditioning in to Bill's suit and stuff. Um, they put the blue vest on and it was against the blue screen. And I was like, I just innocently, asked like, so how are you guys separating this blue? Isn't it to my eye, it's too close to the background of the blue screen. What's the secret to getting, to be able to get the matte line so it'll
Sure. Yeah.
and they all went, and Richard Edlund, everybody went, see, they hadn't thought about it. Like they were exhausted, they were running on fumes, and they just, hadn't noticed that it was too close in chroma. Like, the blues were too close.
Yeah.
So because that happened, like suddenly, I mean, I really think that statement, that question by me, where I really was just trying to learn, sort of led me on a trajectory where eventually I was in the room, watching dailies and talking about the schedule and getting things. I got a big promotion because I asked that question, and so I was very lucky that I had that background of the blue screen before then to be confused about that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's that. I mean, I don't know that I would have thought of that.
Yeah. It was an interesting another time I'll tell you about Intravision, and that's a really interesting Hollywood story, early effects thing that was cooler than anything, but failed dramatically because the boss of the company was crazy. But anyway, sorry. Back to Stay Puft. So
No, it's all good.
Sure.
So you wore many hats at Boss Film, and I know you did a lot of, kind of, I don't know how you want to call it, wrangling or supervising or coordinating. You did a lot of that kind of such. And I was wondering, when you first come in, as you said, stuff had already been kind of moving. what's the fire that you got to put out first? Like where are you needed first? What is happening when you step foot on that?
Well, I
Not
wasn't
set,
I
but
wasn't putting out fires at all in the beginning. In the beginning, I was just like, trying to keep a job, pay my
right.
rent, but I was there. I just read that letter I sent to Matt, like, I was there 2.5 months, which was
Yeah.
longer than I thought it was. But first I was a PA, and I was running errands and picking up supplies and trimming, edges and things like that. And then I think because I'm sort of a natural problem solver and a little bit of a bossy bitch. And so I was scared that we weren't going to make the schedule. I was terrified. I got out my calendar and went, how can we? And part of it was I didn't know how things were done. It seemed absolutely impossible. And so I started asking Bill questions, and Stuart, who was the head of the monster shop, and got into a couple of conversations with Stuart, and he was like, "You do this," and he basically, yeah, you're right. It's not going to happen unless we, organize everything and get it on a list and schedule it all out. And you're in charge of that. Yeah, just check in with me, and before you do, So it was like really quickly I became. It was hard because I was doing. I feel like back in the day I was very good at left and right brain things. Like one of the reasons I had the art department career I had was because I could do the artistic stuff, but also do the petty cash and the scheduling. Like I could do both of those things at the same time. But on Ghostbusters, that was very hard for me because I really wanted to be doing the creative stuff, but I felt what needed to be done was some coordinating and scheduling and stuff. Because everybody had their hands full. It was crazy, all hands on deck. And so I took on some of that boring stuff. And it was difficult because I didn't have my just basic work skills yet. I was a young person, and I
Sure.
I wasn't thinking about things from other people's perspectives. Like, I'm somebody who worked on Star Wars, and I'm 45. I'm an expert in my field. And who's this girl telling me I have to get it done on Tuesday rather than Thursday? I just was like, well, we have to get it done. This is the only way it's going to work, and like, and I didn't quite have my social skills down yet. I didn't have my social skills down yet. I thought if I just, politely said, this needs to be the schedule, it would all, and that really did not go so well especially with some guys who really were, misogyny. They really didn't want a young
But
girl.
you were right. You were right.
Name them.
I don't know if I was right. I looked at the schedule and I only saw one way that we might possibly get it done on time. Like, looking at, because it was just like, if the pyro doesn't get done by here, then this doesn't happen, and then this falls out, and the miniature has to. Oh, but the stages have to switch. Then it was like, it just was like a puzzle, and there were very few paths to getting it done in time, in my opinion, and
Mhm.
and I didn't always handle that really well.
Yeah.
And it was a very steep learning curve, and I think I did learn really quickly, but it was terrifying. It was terrifying. It was like a roller coaster. And then there
For
was the
sure.
joy of doing the puppeteering and helping with the making of it, but at the same time I was like, I felt really responsible for the deadline, even though I was
Yeah.
just a PA, you know.
Yeah.
I'm picturing you puppeteering. You're like, we should have been doing this 60 days ago.
And again, Tom, it's interesting. You keep saying things that you're right. I should have been like that, but to be honest, the minute I would start puppeteering, all that would go
Yeah,
away.
I
I really enjoyed doing that. It was such a joy, and I was very much in the moment. And the minute I put that stuff down, then yeah, I was like, oh, I gotta go. But in the moment, I was able to enjoy it, which is very unlike me. But I was.
Yeah. I
No.
remember when we were together that you had talked about one day, or maybe it was maybe longer than that, but there was a day that you were really afraid that you were going to get in trouble because something went missing. And I know it wasn't your fault,
Oh,
But
yeah, this story. Yeah. The vest. Yeah.
yeah. So
No, well,
what
that's not
happened?
exactly it, actually. That's interesting you phrase it that way. No, because I don't, I guess the story at the conventions and stuff, I didn't, you guys can tell me, but I didn't know about this until I talked to you because I've been sort of out of it. I have this chronic illness. I'm not going to the conventions. So, but no, I hear that, I think I'm the fall guy for the vest not being worn. And when I first heard that in that shot, and I did know about that at the time when I did, at the same time, I was in the dailies and I was the only one from the Stay Puft crew in the dailies, during this time. I think Bill would come in sometimes, but when we discovered it wasn't there, I was there. But I think I remember that. And definitely afterwards, I remember it. But yeah, I guess I've been the fall guy for the vest not being on there. Is it the tie or is it the vest? Now
The
I can't
tie.
remember.
Yeah, it's the
It's
little
the
red,
tie. The
little red
vest is
tie.
there, but the tie wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, my memory of it, and it took me a while to sort of go, now what did happen? Because it's been a long time and I do have foggy brain syndrome here, but my memory of what happened with that after like sleeping on it and going, now, what is it? Because it's been 40 years. Um, we were shooting, the pyro scene was terrifying. I think I've talked to you guys about that. I was a little bit too girly, empathic, fearful about the son of the pyro guy doing his first job inside this, flaming suit. I was terrified. And he was scared, and I just sort of got a little bit too emotionally involved with being afraid. So that was going on. And then we were puppeteering and we were exhausted at the end of a lot of other stuff. Now, my memory of what happened that night is that we had to, I was still the dresser at that point. I was doing all this coordinating. I was the Stay Puft coordinator. I was doing this miscellaneous in terms of scheduling. I was doing miscellaneous coordinating and scheduling too. And I was still the dresser and I was puppeteering. So I was wearing a lot of hats that night. And my memory is that I was in charge of the vest and the tie. And that, there was scaffolding, like not scaffolding, like a platform with the building miniature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he was in the suit on top of that platform. And it was in that parking lot. All of this was shot in the parking lot in front of the state, was beyond, but in the parking lot where that little Stay Puft section of the building, we're sort of off by ourselves. So it was down the street from the main Boss Film. There were several buildings. There was like an administrative building where they were doing the editing, and then there was the big building where the miniatures and the most of the monsters were being done. And then there was the Stay Puft. And in Stay Puft parking lot is where this was being shot. And so I handed this vest and tie off to the effects guy, and they put like the pyro stuff looks sort of like a grid. There were like these little studs of explosives and then wires between it on the back of the vest. And I don't remember how it was on the tie, but it was like they had little, handed both of them and they were doing it. And I remember seeing it later. And I remember telling them I have to come back and, get the roller out and clean this off. And they were like, you will never touch this again because it has pyro on it. And I was like, no, I have to clean it. And they're like, no, we're in charge. And I was like, well, here's the sticky thing. And they were up on this platform off to the side. Here's the sticky roller and the stuff, the cleaning supplies. And I wasn't quite sure they were going to do it, but I knew it was going to catch on fire soon. And then it was like, whew, okay, well, then I can go do this other thing that was down the street.
Yeah.
So I ran down to go do some stuff at the main office, and then I came back to do my puppeteering. And I'm probably part of the chain that fell apart there, because what I should have done was gone to go back and check with them and say, are you lint rollering it, and are you putting it on and whatever? But at that point, I was like, okay, I can't touch it. They're in charge, and everybody knew that. So, that's my link in the chain, and I own up to that. That I, as a new BPA, listen to the people in charge and let them tell me what to do. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't forget the but I definitely was a part of the chain of the tie not being on there. I'll own up to that. What do you think? Not a very interesting story, but
I don't think you're at fault. I don't think that you're at fault, but I do have a question that you can answer with like one word if you'd like.
What's that?
What was the temperature?
Have you just listened to me?
Yeah.
You think I would never answer anything?
Well, for political reasons, but what was the temperature in the room when that discovery was made that there was no tie on the Stay Puft?
It was in the dailies. What I remember about in the dailies is like 1 second, and then I think it was Richard. It might have been John. I can't remember, but they just said you'll never see it. Like,
yeah.
It was.
Maybe I'm a fake fan, but I didn't notice it until I was an adult because someone pointed it out. Like I never caught it. I think it might even have been Billy who said something to me the first time when we talked to him a couple years ago. I'm like, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but you got to know that for the person in charge of the it is really important that you everything is right all the time. And he wasn't. I mean, obviously you can tell from his work, he's a perfectionist. He's a lot of fun, but he's also very professional and really, really works. I don't know if he would see himself as a perfectionist, but from my mind on Ghostbusters, he definitely was trying to tick every box of doing things well.
And he's very proud of Stay Puft. Yeah.
He should be.
Yeah.
He created something really iconic, and that it reverberates, right? Like it has emotional meaning for a lot of people. We project onto it, we interact with it. It's he created a really iconic, lasting character. He should be really proud of it. But things happen along the way. Sometimes they're but yeah, I remember the one thing I remember is that it wasn't like they, maybe it was just there were so many things they were trying to, a lot of balls, fall when you've got 100 in the air and you're trying to catch 100 and you catch 98, so that it wasn't a big thing in the room.
No. And I mean, we've heard about it, so we like to ask about it because it's kind of like fun trivia. But in a world where Ghostbusters was thrown together very quickly and not a lot of time, it's the effects are very, very nice, and they still most of them hold up today. And there's not really like, you can't call it out and be like, oh, look at that, it's a mistake. It's done very, very well for that time.
I think it's possible that kids today will go, oh, those are dorky effects, like the lightning effects and stuff. But I personally, aesthetically, I still think it works, and maybe that's because I'm older. You guys are older now too, getting not as old as I am, but there's a simplicity to the design of the slime, of the lighting, of what, and that simplicity came from the fact that there was no time. And I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't look as dorky as so many effects movies of that time. That if they'd had another couple months, it might have ended up looking dorkier long term. Yeah.
I mean, is it really any worse than seeing Billy walk through the buildings in his Michelin Man shirt with just the head on? I mean, that's a little bit more obvious to me than the missing red tie.
I gotta tell you, that shot I think is I really like that shot. That shot makes me laugh every time I see it. I think it was storyboarded that way. I don't know who did those storyboards. Might have been Bill, but it might have been, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know who did the storyboards, but I just thought that was a really brilliant storyboard, and the way that Bill, I mean, it was art and technical, the way he did the walk. There's the main walk I think we've talked about, or maybe I talked to Claire about it, but in that shot, just the way that head, all you can see is the head. All you can see is the miniatures and the head, and it just I guffaw every time. It's one of my favorite shots in the movie, and who cares, right? Like, if your eye goes to the right place and the story's being told, who cares?
Oh, it's one of the greatest reveals in film history. It's like the
Yeah.
shark from Jaws, or
Yeah.
well, that's the only really good
Which
example I
Diana
got.
has experience with.
Yes.
Well, yeah, a little. Like many movies later, in a movie that nobody cared, like one of the Jaws, the later movie. But that was working with Ted Ray, who is just one of the most talented, effects people ever, and a good friend, and but really, really, in terms of, again, the he just really knows the POV, the perspective, the filmmaking stuff, and he's fascinated by old school filmmaking rules and applying them in new ways. And did you guys see his work on Shadow and Bone? What is it?
I'm not familiar with it.
It's
No.
a really big series. There, it's actually just about to come back. I'm saying that I've got the title wrong. Anyway, he's amazing. So yeah, moving on. Sorry.
If you think of it, let us know. We'll check it out for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I have two more questions for you, Diana, before we wrap up.
Matt's gonna turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah. I know it's late there. Sorry.
No, so we talked a lot about Tim. We love Tim. Did you and you worked a lot with Mark, who was one of your Jacksonville buddies? Did you get to work with Tim at all on set? Did you see him at all on set for Ghostbusters?
Not really. No, like the only time I really worked with Tim, I think Tim got me the job at Coast, but I worked with Tim on a couple of things in his garage, like he did some commercials and stuff. But no, I didn't actually work with Tim a lot directly, and not he was around, but
Yeah.
he did, like, the Ghostbusters 2 thing was his, but no,
That was
I
big,
didn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then
I
he
mean,
must have been, his Terror Dog stuff from the first film must have been just in a different building.
it was in the main building, and he was around, like all of that stuff was happening right there. Like we were, Teresa and she was showing me how to make slime and giant, 55-gallon drums here, while they were shooting, Terror Dog, test right behind there. And then they would be building the Ghostbusters set here. And then Steve would be over in the front. There were front offices. As you went in that building, let me turn the perspective around, but you went in the building, Mary Mason, who you guys should talk to, Mary Mason Claypool, if she hasn't. Have you ever talked to her? She's a great storyteller. She was at the front desk at Boss, and she knew everything. So you should definitely talk to her. She had her finger in every pie and knew everyone. I think she'd be great for you to talk to. But Mary would be there. She was sort of the person who greeted you as you went in. And then off to the left, Randy Cook and Steve Johnson and all those guys were right along the left, building in these separate rooms. They're monsters. And Stuart Ziff's office was here. Am I on screen? Let's see. To the left, look at my screen so I can do it. To the left of the door, several rooms. Stuart Ziff's office here, and then you opened out into this giant space, giant, like a huge studio set. And in the back, the model makers. There's a cat. The model makers were building 2010 stuff. Yeah, you see
Cameo.
That's Bo. 2010 stuff and the Ghostbusters building and other miniatures. And there was a lot of crossover there, Pat McClung and all these great model maker guys. And then stage things along here, sort of some mixology sort of stuff here, foam stuff. Big giant room, no appropriate ventilation or anything that we needed that would be happening today. But then on the down the street where we shot that fire scene and where Stay Puft was, Joe Viscosal was doing the fire testing and stuff. There were several people doing effects stuff there. And then in the other building, which was a block away or something, was where all the editing and Richard and all those people were. But yeah, it was all together. Yeah. So yeah, didn't see Tim a lot on Ghostbusters. I should have, but I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the other question, I was just curious, not necessarily related to working on that film, but as I understand, we did your first autograph signing, and I was just curious, what did you think of that experience? Was that kind of odd for
Yeah.
you? Did you enjoy that? What did you think?
Well, I love you guys, so you made it really easy for me. I was nervous about it because it's strange, it's like strange to like, why would anybody want the PA signature? Basically, is the first thing. It's like, okay, you guys must be Uber fans if you're so I'm like, like nobody. But again, I am proud of working on something that's such an iconic movie. I only did that twice. Like I worked on a lot of stuff, but this and Beetlejuice are the only thing, you can crank out all kinds of movies, but unless they sort of hit the zeitgeist, nobody cares about anything you did at all,
Mhm,
except for
mhm.
the things that matter to them. So I'm happy to have worked on that matter to people, and to be a very small cog in a wheel, that you're part of. So signing was fun. I liked working with you guys. You made it very easy. You were very professional and had everything laid out for me. You calmed my nerves because I don't like this type of stuff. And I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It made me, feel a little proud, a little like somebody
You
wants my
should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We had a great time with you too, and we've made it our
Good
mission to.
cookies.
Yeah, great. Oh, the
Good.
cookies.
cookies.
Yeah,
The drink, that the special concoction that you make there.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good
We
stuff
have a
Yeah, it
too.
was
name for
good.
that now. It's called the Dineapple Surprise.
Oh, I like it.
Ooh.
So, we're gonna wrap up here because
Yeah.
it's getting late for Matt. But where can people find you if they want to seek you out? I know you've been doing some writing, and tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, I'm on these days I'm not doing I go through stages where I'm promoting things. Right now I'm not really promoting any of my things, but I will again. I'm on Facebook. My married name has an odd spelling. It's Hamann, Hamann, like ham, like a ham hock, and Anne, like the lady's name. So it's Hamann. So I was Diana Allen Williams, and now I'm Dinah Hammond. And you can find me mainly on Facebook. I have a bunch of different projects. My main focus right now is Monster May I, which is this it's a kids series and book that is like the final idea is to have pop-up GIF animations with sound, which we're dealing with the technical aspects of that for storytelling for kids. And but it's monster related. I love those monsters. It never leaves me. So the main way to contact me is that way, I think, through
Very good.
Facebook.